Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks,
So, good morning, everybody. My name is Greg Charman. I'm the VP of Solutions and Services at Kelverion. At the Service Desk Automation event last week, I talked to you about the framework of tools, targets, and tactics for you to build out service fulfillment automation project, and how the work that you record in your service desk today are the automation priorities for your business, and how automating the work in your service desk doesn't mean ripping out your service desk and replacing it with something else. You can wrap automation around your existing service desk to achieve those automation benefits that Tessa was talking about. So today what I'm going to do is to actually show you those tools, targets, and tactics in action, actually automating some real things. So as part of that session that we did last week, we discussed the typical type of requests that companies get into their service desk. Things like creating an Active Directory user, adding users to Active Directory groups, creating Office 365 users, assigning them services, providing VPN access, requesting software installs, etc., etc. All of those requests are typically manually fulfilled and they're labor intensive on their own, but particularly when they combine into the service management headache that is a new joiner to a business. For a lot of companies, a new joiner takes all of those individual requests and combines them into a long, complex process, typically involving people from many different teams who administer individual parts of that provision process. To speed things up, many IT teams use an existing employee as a template and copy that profile for that new joiner. And invariably that donor person was chosen because they've been in business for a long while and you know that they have all the necessary permissions. While it saves quite a bit of time, what happens is your new employee suddenly gets a load of elevated rights because the donor had access to systems you didn't even realize because they've been around forever and done lots of roles. As I have with a customer, you find that their new temp in the admin pool has access to the CEO's calendar and email because you accidentally used his old PA as the donor account. This is less than perfect all round. What I'm going to demonstrate to you today is how you can use self-service and automation wrapped around your existing service desk to onboard a new user and assign them access based on the department and role they're going to undertake, rather than cloning an existing user, and how this is all performed automatically. It's a demonstration of those targets, the tools, and the tactics of building automation in practice. So what's the demonstration going to look like? Well, it's going to look like this. We are going to use a self-service portal where a recruitment manager or the hiring manager can request a new joiner. We're going to have automation tied directly into that self-service portal to pick up that request. It's going to integrate into our service desk for change, approval, and logging. And then it's going to go away and fulfill that request automatically for us. So it's going to go off and talk to Active Directory and Exchange and Office 365 and software and provisioning and similar. And when it's completed all those tasks, it's going to come back and update the service desk and that self-service portal. Now, the whole user onboarding process won't quite fit into the 20-minute demo slot that we've got for today. So what I'm going to do is trigger that provision. I'll talk you through what's going to happen, and then I'll show you that the Office 365 part of that piece is actually completed live. So enough slides, let's go and have a look at what is actually going to happen. So as part of this provision process, what we were talking about is creating an Office 365 user. So I'm going to come back in here and show you that we've created a user in a minute, but just to preview that we're not doing it, I have already asked Tessa if I can use her as a target. So I'm going to prove that in my Office 365 system at the moment, we don't have a user called Tessa. So what we're going to go and do is I'm going to run through actually provisioning a new user request into our business. So we've got a new joiner coming in. As the hiring manager, I've been told that the HR resource, we've got a new CEO who's going to join our business. So I need to provision that new person. So I'm going to use the self-service portal. This is the self-service portal we have through Kelverion that we can use to present a front-end interface to people for using systems. For our onboarding process, we have a solution. We have a number of ready-built solutions, and we've got an onboarding one for joining a new person. And the sort of request we can do for onboarding a person is this, that we're going to need to create a new user. So let's go put in some information. So we want to create a new person who's going to join. Start date, well, we're going to have a new executive joining our company. So we'll have a start date of the 3rd of May. It's going to be a permanent employee. Business unit, well, they're going to be part of the executive and general administration, as you would expect. Department, they're going to be part of the executive. As I bring that piece on, we can bring and identify the people who are already in that department, and I can start picking roles. So say Tess could be our new chief executive. So she can have the chief executive role and ultimately in time replace Ken as our chief executive because he's moving on. But because I've picked the business role and the department that she's going into, I can now see a set of services that make sense to somebody joining the executive role. So I can order mobile phones, I can give access to Office 365, I can go off and as a company, we use Salesforce for our CRM systems. So the chief executive might want to be able to see which accounts and sales information we've got, any of the marketing resources. Equally, we might be using Microsoft Teams for collaboration and sharing, so I can make sure that Tessa gets access to the Teams. We're going to be getting her a new PC, so she needs access to the virtual desktop for remote working so that she can use any machine and get into the network and actually connect to that virtual desktop to actually use all of the company's tools and resources in a secure manner. And of course, need VPN access. So we can put this request through. That's the things that she needs for her role. We can pick the options that we want to create as part of that onboarding process. And the automation will take that and turn that into the actual IT functions that are required. So create an Office 365 user, put a user into Active Directory for the on-premise access into the virtual machine and logging into that virtual desktop and going off and provisioning access to groups. So you've got single sign-on into Salesforce and those sort of similar capabilities. So we can go and provision all of those things. So I've created my request. I'm now going to submit that. I need to pick manager, stick that in. I quickly validate the request that's going to go in, submit that. This request has now been submitted, and what's going to happen is the automation will automatically pick up this request and go and start validating and building out that process. So I can go into my request view and I can see this new request, and it's already been picked up by the automation and it's in progress. So what's happening in the background? Well, let me go to our automation environment and actually show you the tools that are going to do the work in the background. So this is the development experience. We were talking about graphical authoring and connections and integrations as part of our tools. So what we have is development experience with integrations to lots of different enterprise tools. There are over 800 integrations available from lots of different vendors, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Cisco, you name it. As vendor products, we then also provide other additions. So Kelverion build integrations out to other tools as well, particularly into service desks and similar platforms, because the challenge with service desks is when you deploy them, you customize them. So because all service desks are fully customization, a lot of the things you see through the UI in the human readable values aren't identified as human readable values in your service desk. They've got unique IDs under the covers. So our smart integrations are able to interrogate your service desk and say, how did you deploy and how do you tie in? So as part of this automated process, we wanted to use change for approvals. So the automation will actually have kicked off a request to go and create a change request in my service desk. In this case, this graphical author Runbook is going to create a change request in ServiceNow for user request gone in. It just needs a validation from security and IT just to say, yes, we know this is going to happen and we're happy for that to go and get approved. I get raised in ServiceNow. We're then monitoring that change approval to pick up the fact that the request has been approved. And once it's approved, we'd go through and drive that automation. And the actual runbook that's going to go and do the work, and it's running in the background as we speak, is this onboarding process, which is made up of a number of subcomponents. But effectively what we've done is we've submitted a request, I've grabbed the properties, and the first part of the process, I'm going to go and create that Office 365 user. So I'm logging into Office 365. I'm calling a runbook that actually goes and creates an Office 365 user. Once I've created the user, we'll assign them a license. And then in parallel, I can go off and run other processes. So in this scenario, we're running, as most companies are doing, a lot of companies are running a hybrid. So you've got some on-premise infrastructure and some cloud infrastructure. So I can run the provisioning processes in parallel, create a user. I can go and create that same user in my on-premise Active Directory. So the two accounts will synchronize. I can set both accounts to have the same password. So you've got a single sign-on, so they're both in alignment. I can go and add my on-premise user into a load of Active Directory groups for authentication and permissions and access to systems controlled by Active Directory. I can go and assign the set of services that the user is going to need in Office 365, like Teams, access to multiple teams, access to SharePoint, OneDrive, Yammer, Planner, you name it, whatever the services that you might be using in Office 365. We can grab all those things. We'll send an email to the hiring manager so that they would be able to know this user's starting, here is the usernames and the temporary, here's the user's account, here's the temporary password that they'll have to change on day one. And then we can drive that information and push that back into the self-service portal. So this is the process of end-to-end that we can put together. And what we have is a number of those pre-configured automations that can be dropped into an onboarding process among other solutions to create users. And we've got 50 odd components, so all around driving Active Directory components, setting up lots of things in Office 365 like group memberships and teams, distributed email addresses, adding them to shared mailboxes if that's appropriate. All of those sort of functions can be dropped in. And I said we run our create Office 365 process. So what does that actually look like? Well, the actual runbook for creating an Office 365 user looks like this. It's graphical authored again. So what we've done is taken from our toolbox of connectors and actions. There are actions to go and interact with Office 365. And we drag them on to do things like connect through to the system. And then we drop on the new user commandlet, which goes and creates that new user. That gives you an ID. You then need to know, get the unique reference for that user that's just been created. A user needs a line manager. So you have to go and get the line manager information. You know what the name is, but you need the unique ID. Once I've got the unique ID, I can link those two together. I can pull out which software licenses are available and assign those user a license. All through this process, down the right-hand side, we've got these red links. So we've got error handling built into the graphical authoring, so you can actually track, record where you're up to. At any point in that process, we can grab that error. And I write it to a database that sits alongside the automation to give it a memory. And then having grabbed that error, I could then raise that, for example, as an incident ticket into ServiceNow, as we showed that as that front-end connector is the thing to say, for example, I created Tessa, but I was unable to assign her a license because we haven't got any Office 365 licenses remaining. So you can go and sort that, and the automation can then progress and receive through. We can even log from a tracking process everywhere we're up to in the process, so we can tell exactly where through the process that provisioning request has got to. So that's what the automation has run in the background, and that's what's happening. So if I go into my Office 365 Admin Center now, and there was no user there before, but if I do a refresh, there we are. We've built a brand new user, created in the system. It's had a look at the settings and configuration and said there was an active account. So I've created an account of tester.tro, one at, and then our demo infrastructure, so we can work. It's already worked out whether there's users and previous information in there. So we've created a unique user ID for that system, allocated the location and a license, and now we can use that account to be able to sign in with the password that was created and has been emailed out to that user. And if I go back into the portal and have a look at my offerings, as you can see, it's now been marked as complete. So the whole automated process is run end to end to say the user was created. There's the user details, and we've got a history about the capabilities and functionalities that ran in the background. And some of you might notice there's a little bit down here, cost saved and time saved. As part of this automation, you're talking about understanding the benefits of the time savings and the cost savings by automating those manually repetitive and labor saving activities. And through our portal, we can track all that, and we can actually report it through a pretty dashboard. So you can actually see how much time automation has saved you by driving this. And your cost savings, most companies are saving 400% return on investment. So as you're running through this during a 12-month period, you'll be able to track for each request that's submitted. If I did this manually, how long would it take? Because I'm doing it automatically, I'm saving that amount of time, and you can give that a cost based on what would it have cost a human being in our business to have done that if there were a level 1 resource or a level 2 resource. So you can actually track time and cost savings by running that automation functionality. So that's what we're looking at from that end-to-end process. So in summary, what is that automated service request fulfillment that we've just driven through? Well, what I want to do in the demo is to prove you that the automated service fulfillment that we were talking about in the event last week isn't a future or a pipe dream. Companies in all sectors, your competitors, are already implementing this, and a lot of them are well advanced with their implementation. And it's available now, so you can modernize the service desk you already have, because it isn't about ripping out the service desk, all the processes that you've got. It's wrapping your service desk in automation and that self-service capability to drive that end-to-end fulfillment. The automation is the one that has the access and control, so you can now use that self-service and make it available, requests available to anybody who can fill in that request. They no longer need any knowledge or skills or access to any of the systems that you're using, because the automation controls the access and the permissions. But fundamentally, it's about empowerment, giving people the ability to fulfill IT requests for themselves or for others in an automated manner. And using that self-service and automation, things can get done without needing any additional technical input. The automation's controls to get things right, so users can do that. So in this modern world, it means that requests can be filled by anyone, anywhere, irrespective of whether they're in the office or at home. Service request automation in 20 minutes, live and working. So, questions?
Thank you very much, Greg. That was brilliant. Before we get on to questions, can I just say, take this opportunity to wish Ken every success in his new role, and I look forward to joining Kelverion as CEO in a few weeks' time. So we'll just do that before we got into questions. First question I have for you is this solution compatible with all ITSM tools, e.g. Top Desk, Manage Engine, etc.?
It is, yes. There are connections. So we've got a number of them already built out. Okay. Manage Engine is currently under development with our own system, and we have looked at Top Desk before, so that's something we have on a development radar. It has a full API, so we can tie it into service desks. So, fabulous. Yep, absolutely.
Brilliant. And somebody else has said, does that include Axios Assist?
Axios Assist, we have got that one on the radar. Axios are changing their API, so we've paused that one and waiting for more customers to work with. So if you have a customer who wants to work with Axios Assist, we'd be very, very keen to work with them to build out and validate these integrations. We build a lot of them directly, but we find that the best way to integrate with any new product is to work with the customer who's using it to make sure that you're building the functionalities that are required in the target tool.
Perfect. So you'd be happy, I suppose, to kind of engage with these organisations and help them fix that.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, brilliant. Well, we've shared that with the audience, so please, anybody, if you want to talk to Greg directly, and actually they're all flooding through now, these questions, and obviously somebody's hit a big send button, so I've got some more here for you. I'll answer 2 more, and then perhaps we'll save the rest for the early part of the Q&A, if that's okay, Greg.
Yes, absolutely.
Fabulous. So let's have a look. What if you don't have role-based access defined in your organisation?
We can use existing processes you're using today. So you could take existing users, or as part of the automation, it gives you, as part of implementing automation, it gives you the opportunity to update and enhance the own processes you're using. Because when we come to implement automation, we typically don't automate the process you run today, because the process you have is limited by the carbon-based life form that operates it. So when you look at automation, you can take the best practices that other people are doing and the things you would aspire to and implement those in the automated process, because the automation doesn't care how many steps it has to do or how labor intensive they are.
Okay, fabulous. And when we're talking about, I suppose, integration, just to touch on what we discussed earlier, basically, if the service desk tool has full API, if you don't currently work with that tool, you're happy to work with a customer to support the integration with them.
Absolutely.
Perfect. One last question is, how is this different from the inbuilt capabilities of ServiceNow? And that might be a longer answer.
Well, the inbuilt capabilities in ServiceNow, obviously, if you have ServiceNow, there is an engine capability in there which you have to purchase as a separate entity, and you could do that. But what we've got is a solution that wraps around any service desk and gives you the flexibility to build out and implement these solutions. But the key thing that we find is particularly with ServiceNow, a lot of the automation requires you to write and code and script within ServiceNow, and the difficulties for most companies is they don't have the development resources on their ServiceNow teams to build out these sort of automations, because you need to be a ServiceNow specialist to build that out. So you're limited to the skills. With the graphical authoring, these sort of things are aimed at your existing level 2, level 3, even level 4 service desk and IT teams who understand the process, and they're the ones who can go and build it out. So you have a much broader team of development and support capabilities to get things built out quicker and easier.
Okay, lovely, fabulous. Thank you very much. I do have a few more questions, but if it's okay with you, Greg, I will save them for the Q&A at the end of today. And also just to say thank you to everybody who's posted a question. If for some reason we don't answer it in the presentation, or we don't get to it in the Q&A, we'll wrap all these questions up and we'll get responses out to you as part of the event follow-up.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, is that okay with you, Greg?
Yes, no problems at all.
Fabulous, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Greg. I look forward to catching up with you at the Q&A a bit later on. And okay. Now, if it's okay, I'd like to hand over to welcome you to our next presenter of the day. So,